Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I'm sharing 2 cards made with the stamps and dies from this month's Hero Arts kit. The stamps in this month's kit are absolutely beautiful, and I'm going to show you how easy they are to layer. The dies in this kit are super creative as well, and I'm going to share 2 different ways to turn the die cuts into shaker cards. So let's get started. Let me show you the stamps and dies that I'm working with. This is the 6x8 stamp set that comes in the kit. You can see it comes with 3 cloud layers, a sun, 2 sun shine layers, a flock of birds, and some heartfelt sentiments. I also have the Hope Word Fancy die, Cloud Fancy die, and Cloud Window die. For this first card, I'm going to stamp all the layers of the clouds and the sun, and then we're going to turn that beautiful hope die into a fun shaker. This is the first cloud landscape layering stamp. It is the most filled in with just a few open clouds, so it's the easiest to start with this layer and then line the others up on top. Since there's a flat edge on the top, I'm going to hang that off the top of my A2 white cardstock panel. I'm doing all my stamping in my MISTI because I find a stamp positioner with layering stamps the easiest way for me to achieve a good impression. I'm going to ink up this layer with Hero Arts Soft Pink Shadow ink because I'm going to work on a sunset sky with pinks and oranges. After inking up the stamp and closing the door of the MISTI, I put even pressure all over the stamp and it came out pretty good the first time. I decided to stamp one more time to really get good complete coverage, but since this is a dye ink, it will take a little time to really sink into the paper and smooth out. The second cloud layer is the next most filled in, and you can see it's pretty easy to figure out where everything lines up in the open cloud spaces. I slide the stamp slightly up and slightly down to the left and to the right to make sure everything is in the spot it needs to be. Once aligned, I close the MISTI and pick up the stamp. Don't forget to readjust your paper into the corner of the MISTI to make sure it hasn't shifted. I'm stamping this layer with Hero Arts Butter Bar, which is a mid-tone shadow ink. I loved the way that looked, but I wanted to add a little bit more orange, so I'm lightly tapping Hero Arts Orange Soda on some parts of this layer to add even more interest. Again, the final layer is pretty easy to line up. You can see it just seems to fit right into place. I always do the trick of slightly adjusting left and right, up and down, just to make sure it's in the right place. You can also usually tell that there's one unique shape, like this tiny cloud, that hasn't been stamped yet at all, and it makes it easier to line the image up. This time, I'm using the Hero Arts Reactive ink in Lemon Drop, which I decided to stamp twice, and then used a bit of the soft pink tapped here and there for some more interesting bits of color. For the sun, I'm lining it up at the bottom of the panel, about in the middle of the card panel. I'm using the Butter Bar ink for the sun and then layering some Lemon Drop on top. Layering inks like this is a great way to achieve new colors if you don't have a ton of them. My MISTI was getting pretty inky, and that's a surefire way for me to end up with ink on my hands and then transferred to a place I don't want on my card. So I used some of the Hero Arts Ultra Clean and a microfiber towel to really clean up the mess. The sun rays are super easy to line up because the stamp has a small half circle cut out of the bottom, so you can see exactly where the sun goes. You can really stamp either of the rays you want first. I started with the larger rays and stamped them in Lemon Drop, and then the other parts of the rays with Butter Bar. Then I lined up the shorter rays on top. It's okay to overlap on the sun a little bit, especially with the colors that I'm using. You won't really notice. I stamped these first with Butter Bar and then stamped the outer edges with Orange Soda. The little birds can go in the clouds, but I liked them flying near the sun rays, and I stamped them with darker pink, which is actually Hero Arts Ultra Pink Mid-Tone Shadow ink. I love this color combination, and it really does look like one of those pink sky sunsets. I ended up with a small edge on the left and bottom because of the MISTI ledges, so I decided to trim the panel slightly down on those sides. Now that the stamping is done, it's time to make the shaker. I'm using the shadow layer of the Hope Word Fancy die and placing it on the open area of the card panel, making sure to leave about the same amount of space on each side. Once that's cut out, grab some acetate. I love these sheets because they are pre-cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Add adhesive all around the open die cut area of the back of the panel. I add tape runner to both sides too, and then just run my finger along the edge of the die cut to tuck any adhesive hanging out back behind the panel and place that down on the acetate. Before I went any further with the shaker, I decided to add a sentiment in the clouds that says, "Sending you a little," in black ink. To cut the inner Hope die, I'm going to use some easy cut thin double-sided adhesive on the back of a gold glitter cardstock by peeling off one protective layer of the easy cut and laying the exposed adhesive on the back of the glitter cardstock. Next, place the shadow layer of the Hope die with the cutting side down on the glitter and run it through a die cut machine. I peeled off the shadow layer and placed it on the waxy side of a sticker backing so that I could line up the inner die on top. Once it's die cut, you need to weed out those inner pieces, trying not to touch all the adhesive on the frame. Then place the glitter Hope inside the window one letter at a time until the whole word is in place. To make the shaker, double up a long strip of double-sided foam tape. Cut one strip of doubled up foam to go edge to edge on top of the word Hope, and one strip to go edge to edge on the bottom of the word Hope. Just don't place any of the tape over any spots of the window like those long rays of the O, and make sure nothing's hanging over the side. Then cut a thin strip of the double-sided foam to go in that skinny spot next to the H and next to the E. Be sure the skinny strips get tucked right into the thicker strips, because if there's any gap and you're using tiny shaker goodies, they will fly right out. Once the foam strips were in place, I poured 2 different types of shaker goodies in the middle open area. Then peel off any remaining protective backings. I didn't want the top or the bottom of the card to get folded down and smushed, so I added some foam tape to the top and bottom of the card to keep the whole panel popped up. This definitely would have been easier to do before pouring in the shaker goodies, but I didn't think of it then. Then place an A2 piece of cardstock lined up on the back. Press down to adhere to the foam tapes and flip it over to see how cute that Hope die cut looks as a shaker. For this next card, I'm going to share how to use just 2 of the cloud layers of the stamp set to create the inside of a shaker, and then use the cloud die to create the shaker shape. I cut the cloud window die out of an A2 panel of white cardstock and placed it over another white A2 piece of cardstock. Using a pencil, I lightly traced the circle so that I can see where I need to stamp those clouds. I put the panel with the pencil lines in the MISTI and line up the sun in one corner, making sure to overlap the pencil line so that you won't see that flat edge of the sun from outside the shaker window. Pick up the sun, stamp it, and ink it with Hero Art's Dandelion Bold ink. Then line up the large sun rays, again being sure that the edges fall outside that pencil-drawn circle so you won't see them through the window. And the same with the shorter rays too. Just line them up to the bottom of the sun so that you won't see any flat or straight edges through your round window. For the clouds this time, I'm starting with the second layer of clouds. I don't want to use that first layer because it has that flat edge. And since I'm working inside a circle and not at the top of the rectangle, I just want the 2 other layers of clouds. So I line up that second layer inside the circle, just slightly overlapping some of the sun rays, and stamped that with Hero Art's Summer Sky Bold ink. Then I lined up the third layer on top. Even without that first layer stamped, it's still pretty easy to figure out where this third layer goes on top. I stamped this layer with Hero Art's Indigo Bold ink. I decided to use the same indigo to stamp the sentiment, "Wishing you a better tomorrow," outside the die cut cloud window. So now I'm working on the other piece of cardstock. Just like the last card, I'm going to flip the top panel over that just has the die cut window and the sentiment stamped on it, and add tape runner all around the die cut area and place it on an A2 piece of acetate. For this shaker, I know I'm using tiny shaker goodies, so I'm only using one layer of foam adhesive because I just don't need that much height inside the window. This time, it's a lot easier to add the side foam strips because the sides of the window are wider than they were on the last card. Again, I make sure all the pieces of foam touch so that none of the tiny shaker goodies fall out. It is easier to make a square around the circle rather than try to make a circle of foam strips, and the shaker works just as well. I poured the shaker stars inside the foam strips and peeled off the back protective layers of the foam. I made sure I had my stamped clouds facing in the right direction and laid them down on top of the exposed foam. I pressed down to adhere the back, which has the cloud stamped on it, to the front, which has the sentiment stamped on it. I used the little cloud die to cut out another white cloud from cardstock, and I'm popping it up on an extra piece of doubled up foam that I had on my desk and layering it over the bottom left corner of the window, creating even more dimension. I really love how different these two cards turned out using similar techniques and some of the same products. I've always struggled making the perfect cloud background. These stamps and dies make it super easy. So if you're interested in grabbing the kit, I will have it linked down in the YouTube description box below. If you want to see more card techniques like this, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and be sure to hit that bell so you can be notified every time I have a new video available. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. For this next card, oh gosh. I don't know if that's my brain moving faster than my mouth or my mouth moving faster than my brain. Either way, it's not great. Well, that's better. That's better.